Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Real United States. I'm your host, Paul Campbell, and behind the camera, as always, is our camera operator and my wife, Beverly Campbell. Welcome to Constitution Gardens here on the National Mall in downtown Washington, D.C. We're here at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial inside of the Constitution Gardens. This particular memorial, probably because it's from an era that I can remember, is a little more touching than some of the other memorials from historic past. Now, the Vietnam War ended while I was still in high school. I was not old enough to have served, but I was only a couple of years away from when it actually ended, when I would have become an adult. So this was an era that played a very significant role during my entire life growing up. It's kind of interesting now, as an older man, to think about the fact that if you're 40 years old, you have no recollections of the Vietnam War. We will celebrate or observe the 40th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War next month here in the United States. So unless you're my age, you probably don't have any memories of it. And unless you're very nearly 60 or past, you didn't serve in Vietnam. So this memorial has a broad range of meanings to people who come here to visit. Some it's very, very emotional. Those who served, obviously those who lost loved ones. Fortunately, Beverly and I did not lose loved ones in the war. We've had those in the family that served, but returned safely. And unfortunately, not everyone did. The wall here, interestingly, was built very nearly after the end of the war. It was actually completed in 1983, only about 8 years after the end of the Vietnam War. And it was relatively controversial, because the war was still very fresh in everybody's minds. But it was completed from the designs of a woman named Maya Lin, who was an undergraduate student at Yale University at the time, and they did a contest of submissions for the design. I think there was something like 42 of them that were submitted, and hers was selected. It was a blind judging. They didn't know who the designers were. So this particular one was chosen, and it's unlike most of the memorials here in the United States in the fact that it's more symbolic and not like the statues. Now, that's not to say this is actually a 3-acre memorial, and there are statues. There are the 3 soldiers and the woman's memorial that are bronze statues that we'll take you to in a moment. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall, though, was more abstract. It's made out of a type of rock called gabbro. It's an igneous rock, relatively porous. This has been highly polished, and the names of more than 58,000 fallen soldiers are inscribed on this wall. And you see it's designed as a cut into the earth. And the reflective surface gives this effect of those that look into it of being able to see this sort of ethereal reflection of the world and themselves in a world that they can't reach. A very moving monument. Now, we're here this particular time of year. We're here in the snow in the wintertime. Well, because nobody else has done this. Usually this is photographed or filmed in the nice weather in the summer. There's grass and leaves on the trees. And then maybe because the Vietnam War was fought in a tropical jungle environment. But this really shows you the emotional impact of this particular monument, this stark contrast between the snow and this black igneous rock with the names inscribed on it. Let's take a walk down and look along the wall. Now, as I had mentioned, in addition to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall, there are two other statues as part of this entire memorial, and this is the Three Soldiers Memorial. I don't know a great deal about this. I don't know who the artist was, but this is a bronze statue that depicts what would have been typical weaponry and dress and whatnot of the soldiers in Vietnam during the 1950s, 60s, into the 70s. And it was a more graphic representation of the people that served, in adverse to the memorial wall, which is a more artistic tribute to those who fell. Interesting that we chose to shoot it this time of year, with the snow on the statues. Again, a little out of place, since Vietnam was a very tropical environment, a lot of heat, a lot of rain. Whence you'll notice the soldiers are dressed relatively lightly to cope with the heat in the environment during the war. The sculptor's done an excellent job. There's something very haunting about the eyes on these statues. It's a brilliant work of art. The last of the tributes, certainly not least, here at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial is the Women's Memorial. This large bronze statue depicts the women who served in the Vietnam conflict. Now, women in the 50s, 60s, and 70s largely served as nurses. They didn't serve in combat capacity, to my knowledge, but they played an integral role, and there were thousands of them who were over there and saved many, many lives. So certainly a very, very, very welcome and important part of our operations in Vietnam. And so this is a lovely tribute that they were also included in this memorial. We're going to swing around to the other side and show you the other side of this particular statue. I think this is indicative and portrays that while women were not combat forces in Vietnam, that the trauma, the horror, and the emotional impact of war was no less great for them than the soldiers that served on the field. So I'd like to thank you for joining us here on the Real United States, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in downtown Washington, D.C. on the National Mall in Constitution Gardens. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. We hope you'll subscribe and join us for future episodes if you haven't already. If you have questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. We love hearing from all of you. I try to get back to everybody as soon as I possibly can. And as always, thank you for watching.